The powerful Jedi Master Mara Jade Skywalker would be introduced into the Legends continuity lore during the Thrawn trilogy, here where we would meet a former assassin of the Emperor desiring to get revenge on Luke for ruining her life. But as fate would have it, later on down the road, she would end up being trained in the light side and eventually joined Luke's Jedi Academy, going from enemy to ally with the Jedi Grand Master, and then eventually becoming his wife. Even though Luke was aware of Mara Jade's past as a hand of the Emperor, he loved her dearly and didn't hold her past over her head. But it was a good thing that his father wasn't alive any longer, because Vader certainly would not have approved of his new daughter-in-law. Back in the days of the Empire, Mara Jade actually had something of a rivalry between Darth Vader, and he absolutely detested her for it, deeming her unworthy, and even grew to the point of hatred. So in today's holocron, we are going to be talking about why Darth Vader absolutely despised Mara Jade. For those who may not know, or may need a quick refresher, Mara Jade was known as an Emperor's Hand. The Hands were specially trained force-wielding assassins beholden to Palpatine himself. Each of them were insanely loyal to the Emperor, and he often sent them on clandestine missions that needed to remain off the books, to even Imperial personnel. They were mainly Sith agents. Many agents within the higher ranks of the Empire weren't even aware of the Emperor's Hands, with many actually believing that Mara Jade herself was simply one of the Emperor's concubines. She maintained that cover for some time, though she was never actually a concubine to the one Emperor. The real kicker about the Emperor's Hands, though, is that there were many of them, at least over a dozen, but none of them were aware of one another, and all of them believed that they were the only Emperor's Hand. Palpatine liked it this way so that none of them could band together, and it ensured that they remained totally loyal to him. Unlike the Inquisitors, Palpatine believed that if the Hands came together, they could prove to be a real threat to his rule. But in truth, Mara Jade was his favorite. Taken from her parents at a very young age and raised in the Emperor's palace on Coruscant, Mara Jade would be trained in the ways of the Force and became the most skilled of the Emperor's assassins. She genuinely loved and admired Palpatine, believing with her whole heart that he believed that she was essentially his daughter and an heir to the Empire. The Emperor cultivated this delusion by showering Mara in gifts and privileges. Mara Jade became one of the Emperor's closest confidants and trusted informants, and this is one of many reasons why Vader held her in such contempt. Vader considered Mara Jade to be extremely annoying, as the Emperor treated her like a little princess, which made her essentially untouchable. Mara garnered his favor because of her success rate, that being the highest of any Imperial agent. Sometimes this list even included Darth Vader on successes alone, a fact Mara Jade and the Emperor would remind Vader of. Mara Jade rarely ever got punished for her failures besides maybe having restricted privileges or the Emperor's cold shoulder. Palpatine wisely knew the exact right way to manipulate her, acting more as a father figure, and then gave his look of affection or disapproval depending on her performance, similar to how he would of Anakin. But of course, because Mara Jade was more often successful, she gained a lot of affection and even more mercy from the Emperor. This gave her a massive ego that made her believe that she could one day replace Lord Vader as Palpatine's official Sith apprentice, another delusion that Palpatine allowed to persist. Vader absolutely hated anyone who was allowed to be on equal grounds as him as Palpatine's second, especially those who he considered to be lesser beings. This was the reason he had such a deep hatred for Grand Moff Tarkin, but at least their rivalry was a lot more professional, and they still held a certain amount of mutual respect for one another. Vader did not like nor respect Mara Jade whatsoever, and their rivalry could be called anything but professional. Mara Jade had the Emperor's hand of protection more than anyone else. Not even Vader was allowed to touch her in any way, but he wasn't able to say anything to her either, or put her back in her place. That was the Emperor's sole job. Vader knew very well that she was one of a dozen, but he wasn't able to tell her that whenever she started to get a large head. Both Vader and Sidious knew that she would never replace him as a true apprentice, but it was the fact that Vader couldn't actually prove that to her that made her so infuriating. And of course, Palpatine allowed this to happen in part because he found it amusing, but mostly because he felt that infighting would keep his subordinates ambitious and powerful, wanting to please him, therefore garnering better results. But Vader's deep-seated hatred for Mara Jade did not stop with her favor with the Emperor. she constantly undermined Vader's efforts in several Imperial operations. Because she was dispatched by the Emperor personally, Vader wasn't allowed to know exactly where she was going or what she was doing. Sometimes, Mara Jade would actually be sent on missions to slow Vader down, such as when Palpatine sent her to try and assassinate Luke while Vader was searching for him. But much earlier on, Mara also proved to undermine Vader's efforts when hunting Jedi. This category was exclusively Vader's operation, so the moment that she butted into this was when he drew the line. There was a time when Palpatine summoned Vader back to take care of a Jedi that he had located. Vader was perplexed at how his master could have found a Jedi when Vader had eliminated so many of them, and now his own searches yielded no more results. But Sidious snidely says that indeed Vader's searches were no longer fruitful, but Palpatine's own pawns had succeeded where Vader had failed. It was then when Palpatine summoned Mara Jade from the shadows and complimented her skill set, mentioning that Mara can be more resourceful in ways that Vader was not. His reasoning being that she was a more delicate touch than Vader ever was, and that this is how they would weed out the Jedi. Mara revealed that the Jedi she uncovered was no other than the Dark Woman herself. This specific Jedi Master was one that the Empire had been hunting for a very long time, as she is one of the most powerful and important Jedi Masters of the Republic, and one of the last surviving true threats. But Mara Jade went so far when she insisted that she should be the one to assassinate the Dark Woman. Vader snaps back and correctly informs her that her meager Jedi training would never be enough to ensure success against the power of such a powerful Jedi. Palpatine would break up this squabble by choosing Vader to do the job, mentioning that he does indeed have far more experience in destroying Jedi than Mara Jade did. Not only that though, but that the Dark Woman Anya Kuro was too important to allow her fate to be left to chance and a test. This was Vader's calling. So far, we've talked about many of the reasons why Vader hated Mara, and most of them were due to status. It may be easy for us to believe that Vader would ignore her, just as one may ignore a squeaky door hinge. But what Vader can't abide by is how the Emperor allowed him to be humiliated in front of her. Apparently, there were moments when Palpatine allowed Mara Jade to be present whenever he was punishing Darth Vader. When speaking to Luke, Mara recalled a time when she was present to watch Palpatine take one of Vader's arms out of a rage for his failure. The Sith apprentice may have been able to overlook Mara's spoiled attitude, or her delusions of grandeur, delusions that she was more important or more powerful than she really was. Perhaps he could even let go of the fact that Palpatine was using her to sneak around Vader's back. But there was no way that Vader could ever forgive being disciplined in front of a lesser being like one of the Emperor's hands. The real punishment with Sidious taking Vader's arm was not in fact the act itself, but it was the fact that he did so in Mara Jade's presence. There are few greater ways to insult a Sith than to make them look weak in front of a lesser being. And that, my friends and acolytes, is why among the ranks of the Empire, Mara Jade was among Vader's most despised. But now, do you think that Vader was correct to hate Mara Jade for the reasons that we listed? And if you were Palpatine, would you have let Mara Jade get this big of an ego? Did it really improve the Empire and Vader that much? And was Palpatine correct? Let us know your thoughts and opinions down below, my friends, and as always, may the Force be with you.